We will now open the floor to questions, and my colleague Jad Moad, who I'd like to introduce, he has a microphone. We'd only ask that you give your name and organization. So, right here.
Thank you. Excuse me. Vanya Walker-Lee from the Malta Business Weekly. As regards your long-term air quality goal, you're going to present this to the G20. What about the other 176 countries in the UN? Will you get somebody to present a proposal in Marrakesh or at the Facilitative Dialogue in 2018 so that perhaps this could become a COP decision? Also, your goal to cut deaths by 50%. Well, what about 100%? Can't you aim for that?
Okay, we'll take 2 or 3 questions at a time. So maybe right here and then right here. Thank you.
I'm Helen Robertson from Petroleum Economist. I just had a question about, in terms of sort of the breakdown, if you could be a bit more specific about actual numbers. So you've mentioned the 7% increase in investment needed. From what to what and sort of over what time period? And also more specifically, how do you envisage that we can actually provide an incentive for people to make that happen?
Yeah, just to add to that, on the 7%, is that...
Okay,
sorry, Tom Young from Argus Media. Is the 7% cut on top of investments that would need to be made as part of Paris emissions cuts anyway? Secondly, yeah, just to talk a bit about the interaction with Paris targets and whether the best framework for this is to be done through NDCs or as a separate kind of initiative.
Thank you.
Okay, let me start first. Now, yes, you are right. G20 countries are important, but there are 170 other countries in the world. But G20 countries include some of countries where this problem is very serious. Some major Asian countries, such as China, India, Indonesia, these are important countries, but we will be not stopping with G20. We will be across the globe, and throughout the year, we are going to bring these messages. It will be in New York, United Nations, but it will be with the African Union, it will be with the Asian Development Bank, and all other fora. We are going to bring this. And our measure, we call it the pragmatic and cost-effective measures, make 50% cuts. If you go beyond those measures, if you are more radical, if you spend more, definitely you can go and nullify those number of deaths. But we thought at the first instance we can focus on this target. But of course, as I said, we are going to work on that, and we are going to hopefully see significant number of reduction in deaths. 7% is compared to what otherwise would be, which includes the so-called NDCs on top of that 7% additional increase in the investment between now and 2040, in the next 25 years on average. So it may sound small, but it is in fact small. But if you think of it as the next 25 years, and if you compare it, what you get out of it, namely the half of the people will be alive who would otherwise lose their lives. It's I would say it's a very logical step to make. And this is not only, I should also mention this is not only in the energy sector moving from coal to renewables issue. This is also putting regulations in place and monitoring. Some of them, some of the measures we have in mind do not necessarily cost money as well. For example, countries need to make sure that every power plant has the best available scrubbers equipped, or the cars need to have catalytic converters. And on top of that, this is more important, they should be monitored and enforced. There's a penalty. If you don't do it, if you have only the legal basis, it does not mean anything. Because in some countries, I will not give the names, but in some countries, this legal basis is already there, the mandatory. But there is no monitoring and enforcement and the punishing the people who do not obey those mandatory regimes. So therefore, putting a bit more money is a part of the problem, but it's not everything. Therefore, there is a big role here for the governments, for the public administrations. It is private sector should be a part of it, but the public administration should be definitely the key, play the key role. Laura, would you like to add a few things?
Yes, ma'am. So as our executive director just mentioned, we are in a very sober picture, but coming out of Paris, the INDCs will play, if enforced, a major role in making this picture not as sober as it could have been. Let me be a bit clearer. If the INDCs wouldn't have happened, those pollutants would have grown more, so the picture that you have seen, the 3 million people dying going to 4.5, would have been worse. So there are two things that are happening going forward. If we include INDCs, there are two main things that matter, is that 50% of the countries that put forward INDCs said that they would have done renewables, another 40% said they would have done energy efficiency. Why is this relevant? Because in both cases, you don't combust to produce energy. So those two things are key in reducing emissions going forward, and this proves that government policies are being effective in that direction. There is another part of the story that is a good part of the story, and that are effectiveness of policies, and are those policies that, instead of avoiding emissions, that are what energy efficiency and renewables are doing, reduce emissions. So in this category, for example, you would see what China and India has just put forward, putting stringent emissions control for new coal-fired power plants, or making more stringent the vehicle standards for cars that, again, China and India have just put forward. Extremely, extremely successful policies. In the absence of those, we would have gone much worse. So the INDC is moving into the right direction, is not doing the entire business. We could do more. We could do, as the executive director mentioned, we could increase investment by 7%. How much is 7%, and where this 7% should go? 7% is $4.7 trillion from now to 2040, and are roughly split into two. Again, half of the money should go into avoiding emissions. Here I'm really talking about, again, renewables, energy efficiency, making your cities smarter to go more for public transport. And another half of it would just go to put and equip with best available technologies in a very gradual manner all your coal-fired power plants, all your cars, and so on and so forth. Just one number to make things clearer. Of course, renewables would emit zero, but the coal-fired power plants with the best available technology would cut emissions up to 98%. So it would be equally very, very effective. So those are the two main areas that would avoid emissions and reduce emissions, and basically split by half.
But once again, this 7% investment is not the everything. We need policies put in place, the mandatory policies, and them to be monitored and enforced. So it is not only the financial measures, it also needs policy, government policies. So it is the reason we are going to take the governments as our partners in this debate at the first instance. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. More questions? We have one right here, and then right behind.
Hi there, I'm Megan Darby from Climate Home. I'm glad the first three questions were specific to this report because I'm afraid I'm going to be rude and ask about Brexit, which, I mean, obviously has implications for energy, air pollution and climate change. And I'd really be interested, Fatih, in your initial thoughts on what it is going to mean, how it affects the outlook for the UK and for Europe. I'm particularly interested in the climate policy element to that.
Jim Varley with Modern Power Systems. You mentioned the new regulations in China and India for coal plants, new coal plants. So are you going to tell them that they're just not, those regulations aren't good enough? Is that your message to them, or perhaps you could elaborate on that? Thanks.
Hi, Tom Young from Argus again. I just wondered if you could talk a bit more about the impacts of if the scenario, the clean air scenario on fossil fuel demand, how that would affect things, but beyond what Paris or even beyond what a 2-degree scenario would do.
Okay. Let me take the first two and ask my colleague Laura to deal with the third one. Now, with the Brexit, it is, I think, too early to make any judgment, but I can tell you two things. One, energy sector, energy investments don't like uncertainties, and the situation now is bringing another uncertainty in terms of the economic outlook, and I hope that this uncertainty is situation is resolved as soon as possible. The second thing is about the impact on the energy or air pollution, or in general in the environment. We had a very successful result in Paris last December, and more than 180 countries signed that agreement. But we shouldn't forget that the European Union has been the champion of fighting against climate change and asking for an international agreement for years and years. It was great to have United States, China, India, other countries coming together with the EU, but we shouldn't forget the leadership that the EU had years and years in the context of climate change and environment. And when it comes to air pollution, again, we know that the European Union is now working on to get very stringent standards in air pollution. And I hope the work of European Union gives inspiration to all the countries around the world. In terms of China and coal, today half of the coal in the world is consumed in China. So half of them in China, the other half the rest of the world. And we have seen 2 years in a row Chinese coal consumption is declining, mainly because of the Chinese government taking a decision to shut down inefficient coal-fired power plants and putting new regulatory measures in place. What we are going to tell China and other emerging countries is that they should continue to be strict on the pollution control levels of in their power plants, but at the same time there is a need to monitor and empower, and if there are any power plants which are not generating electricity in line with those standards, they should take the necessary measures in line with their rules. So China is in the right way, but there is a need to go stricter, especially when it comes to coal consumption. And I should tell you that, leave the coal aside, China is today the home of the bulk of the renewable energy investments worldwide made, and the major improvements in terms of energy efficiency. So if we see global emissions being under downward pressure, China plays perhaps the most important role there. There was one more question about the role of fossil fuels, Laura, in the context of the clean air scenario. Would you like to take it up?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Yeah, so we see basically three key things happening. First of all, global energy demand compared to our main scenario by 2040 will be lower because we have more energy efficiency measures pushed, so around 13% lower. What happens to fossil fuels is not exactly what should happen in a scenario that is compatible with the 2-degree trajectory. So in a scenario compatible with the 2-degree trajectory, you would see oil and coal demand peak by 2020 and decline very, very steeply. What you see here, that demand for oil and for coal continue to increase in the 2025s and then slightly decline, but not at a rate that you would need to see in a scenario compatible with 2 degrees. And we see a definite role for gas going forward. The other fuel that is hit very strongly is biomass, as is combusted and pollutes in terms of particulate matter. And for what concerns all fuels that are combusted, so all fossil fuels plus biomass, we see the share of fossil fuels and biomass that are equipped with advanced control technologies going very rapidly from today 44% to over 3/4 in 2040. One final important point that I think is worth mentioning, our executive director stressed the importance of enforcement. We now have technologies like renewables, like energy efficiency, like electric vehicles, for which the enforcement cost is zero. Once they are on the streets or equipped, you don't need to follow any enforcement. By definition, they will not emit. So there are ways now, thanks to technology breakthroughs and declining cost, to make for the policymaker compliance at a lower cost going forward.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, we have time for, I guess, one more. Go ahead.
Konstantin Rozhnev, Argus Media. I wanted to ask you about the IEA's outlook on the penetration of cleaner vehicles, such as electric and hybrid, and the impact on oil demand in the transportation sector, and also whether you think that oil and gas companies currently underestimate potential developments and they might be in for a shock.
Was there another question? Okay, we'll take one. You haven't had one yet, so.
Sophie Christian from Concrete. I was just curious about how like the environmental research at universities will be affected in their funding by Brexit, because I assume they contribute to your studies.
Let me start with the last one, which is the easiest one. We don't know. We will see how the discussions between the UK government and the EU officials will go forward, but we hope that they are not negatively affected. Now, in terms of electric vehicles, we at the IEA look at each year, look at the progress of all clean energy technologies. Are they doing fine, or are they doing in the middle, or are they doing bad? We look at all the technologies. And it is in our report called Energy Technology Perspectives. And what we have found out is that generally we are not doing very well in the clean energy technologies, but there are two areas that we are doing good. One is the wind and solar penetration. The second one is the electric vehicles. Last year, the electric vehicles increased by 75%, number of electric vehicles. And last year, again, we have seen that the number of electric vehicles in the world exceeded the 1 million mark globally. This is a very good move, but it is still less than 0.1% of the global car fleet. There is a big way to go, and in that respect, it's promising, but in the absence of strong government support, our aim in order to be in line with a 2-degree scenario to come to 1 billion electric cars will be missed. So therefore there is a need for government support. This can be in terms of the direct subsidies or the carbon pricing or whatever. This is number one. Number two, in order to have the net benefits for the environment, electric needs to come, the power needs to come from carbon-free sources or less carbon sources today. The benefits with the current electricity generation mix we have worldwide today to have the electric cars will not be as beneficial as we may think, especially in the countries in Asia or in the United States and elsewhere. So we have two things at the same time. On one hand, if we want electric cars, but also decarbonize the power systems. We are, as the IEA, working very hard on electric cars because we have been last week, Rebecca, if I am not wrong, yes, last week, we have been assigned by the home of the Clean Energy Ministerial, which is 23 key countries in the world, such as US, Japan, China, India, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, countries who are pushing the clean energy technologies, try to accelerate them, look for a home to coordinate their activities. And all these ministers in San Francisco proposed the International Energy Agency to be the coordinating organization for that. And one of our activities, one of the key activities, and my colleague, Dr. Timur Gül, is in charge of that work, is to look after how we can increase the penetration of electric cars. So I think we finish it here.
Okay, thank you again for coming, and please note the report will be available for free download on our website, and there are also copies on the table up front. Thank you.